Welcome guys back to the Neomark show. Today I'm your host on the NM platform for Neomark. This is the second episode and today we're gonna get into GEAR. That was the macroeconomic policy of 1996 after the end of Apartheid, implemented mainly by the ANC and other individual parties that form coalition within the ANC party. So this issue has been a critical matter, as in my last video we have talked about the deindustrialization of South Africa and how this affected us. So today I have interesting facts that we should delve into and the source of the problems that we currently face today. So it's a multifaceted, complex situation where our problems and issues are implemented by deindustrialization, policies that don't put national interest at heart, and also GEAR, which I like to call the gear of destruction and, endless cycle of poverty. So that gear is not for progress, it was for backwards. So I have it all here, guys. I always have evidence, sources. I want anybody to refute me. I had a fight with somebody on Twitter, on X, on X. So this other dude, he was just very, very, very bad. Was criticizing me that I don't have the sources and facts, but it's just literally under my video description. So I just gave him that, but that didn't apply to his mentality. So I'm like, I don't have time for this bullshit. Sorry for my vulgar language, guys, but just honestly, it is what it is. So guys, we're gonna delve into GEAR, the Growth and Employment Redistribution Act, South Africa's 1996 macroeconomic policy. The GEAR strategy was launched in mid-1996 as the ANC government new macroeconomic framework for post-apartheid South Africa. Finance Minister Trevor Manuel described it as a plan of tighter fiscal policy and the steady liberalization of foreign exchange controls. Its stated goal was to ambitiously increase GDP growth rate to about around 6% by 2000. So in the span of 4 years, it was sort of like a mini 5-year plan, but for 4 years, and the creation of 400,000 jobs per year, inflation under 10%, and debt reduction. Key objectives included promoting private sector-led growth, fiscal discipline, and export-oriented economy, and redistribution by theory, creating jobs and stabilizing the economy. In practice, GEAR just prioritized state and private investment into the national economy. So it didn't achieve that. We all know since 1996 until now, the unemployment rate has been averaging around 17 to 35%, if I'm searching right now. 35%. So this just does not work. We all know that. So the key policies and actions under GEAR was to just liberalize everything and privatize many state institutions and controls that have been labor-intensive markets. As I told you, that the real productive economy is an economy backed by real labor and productive sectors of the economy. So also I've seen that there was many privatizations of state institutions that are very productive and very efficient and effective. So due to these matters, this has been a complex idea, and there's been many issues, and I have the receipts here with me. There's just too many, but they're not that too many. I want you to show that I have the evidence, the papers here. Papers talk, right? Yeah. So ever since the GEAR system was meant to privatize the following state-owned enterprises and institutions in South Africa. One of them was Eskom. The second was Iscor, which is now called Anglo-American Company Mittal. Fourscore, SAHO, SOCER, the Postal Service, SABC, Amscor. Amscor was like, I don't know, the predecessor to Denel Systems, if I'm certain. SAA, which is South African Airways. So these were the major critical companies that were to be privatized within the new democracy-led nation of the Republic of South Africa. So basically, the privatization of these companies, and these companies, remember, they had a lot of workers working for them, and they employed many people. So that's why people like to call like post and pre-apartheidism the golden age, like before 1994 and after 1994, but majorly after 1994 became a sort of like type like of golden age of South African expedition into economic productiveness. So in 1998, President P.W. Bush announced plans to privatize several state-controlled industries, including the ones that I mentioned before, Eskom, Fourscore, Iscor, as well as state-operated transport, postal, and telecommunication services. Following the dwindling resources of economic sanctions and global economic depression, state corporations had been major recipients of large foreign loans. So in privatization sectors, as we now can see, there's the major telecommunications network before the 2000s and before 2003 and 2004 was Telkom. And in 1997 to the period of 1998, it sold 30% of Telkom to foreign investors. So this privatization of the gear system made by Trevor Manuel and Gil Marcus and many others, which I will mention later on in the video, they wanted to privatize these critical state institutions. As you can see, they sold 30% of Telkom to foreign investors, US-based SBC and AT&T and Malaysia's Telkom Malaysia Network Company, for 750 million rands. Like imagine 30% for 750 million rands, not even a billion. So mind you, this privatization is leading to issues that many people now are complaining about Telkom not working in certain areas of South Africa. And before these massive sell-offs, there was very much heightened connection. Like interconnectivity, I could communicate with somebody, let's say for example, I'm in Johannesburg, I could communicate with somebody in the rural villages of Durban and the Northern Cape. You know, there's hilly network frequencies and many terrain masking appearances. So this just shows that the privatization of this sector was a major issue, and some benefactors, they wanted to have quick cash by privatizing these major state corporations that employed hundreds to like tens and millions of people, whites or Bantu black. So also in 1999, this privatization act under Trevor Manuel and Gil Marcus sold off 20% of South African Airways to Swiss Air, later repurchased by Transnet Transnet. There's many issues there. I'll do that in a future in video about state institutions that collapsed under these policies. And 20% of airports company South Africa to Italy's Aeroporto di Roma. All of this. That's why our national military defense is collapsing in real time. It's due to these acts of selling to foreign people who do not have the best interests at heart of me and you, like average normal South Africans. So although the spokesperson of the government say the GEAR policy will lead to implementation of RDP, many democratic movements have pointed out that GEAR will in fact lead to complete undermining of the RDP program. GEAR will lead to job loss, and no jobs will be created. In many industries like textile, clothing and leather sectors, many jobs have already been lost because of low policy of lowering tariffs. You remember that before GEAR there was many protectionist policies and tariffs that protected domestic industries and domestic businessmen, SMEs, small to medium enterprises that worked under a system of a free market economy but under state direction. So in many industries like textile, clothing and leather sectors, many jobs have already been lost because of policy of lowering tariffs. If you lower tariff, just basically opening your house or farm to a bunch of looters, like a bunch of robbers. So you never, if you want a growing economy or a prosperous economy, you have to always maintain strict tariffs and protect the national interest over foreign interest. But this is a major issue between lower class, middle class and higher class and the elites. So the government's dependency on the banks to deliver housing has led to no delivery. And recently the government has said since it has no money for people to live in shanty towns where the government can provide latrines, central taps, the ideal of decent and affordable housing. I don't know what's happening today. The ideal of decent and affordable housing that was spelled out in RDP has been abandoned. So you mind you, this is a very critical issue, because if RDP was like abandoned, it's because the government couldn't access credit lines for it to basically fix the issues of many South Africans that live in informal sectors or shacks, informal housing, poor sanitation. That still continues 30 years now. It's been 30 years. 30 freaking years we've been waiting for this, but it's because the government couldn't access credit from the banks. Imagine. What the hell is that, man? Come on. But we know who these big conglomerate banks work for. We all know. They just work for people who have already been well off in life and have assets, have something, a quick cash to sell, have speculative assets, financial assets. So it doesn't work for the common folk of me and you. So they didn't see a benefit into investing into national housing programs to house people, sanitary issuance, and excellent service delivery. So, like, what? It just doesn't make sense, man. This really doesn't make sense. And when I look at this, it's just really, really crazy, man. Just really, really crazy. Got all the receipts. All the receipts right here. I'm sorry guys about the bad lighting, man. I'm just starting this show. I have to patch up. Remember, all this thing just comes from my pocket, so My service is to you. My service is to South African people. We have to maintain our national interest at first. And yeah, that's my job. Privatization and corruption, the South African context. Corruption has become an international concern. As we all know, there's no nation that doesn't have a corruption, but yeah, many nations do tend to have corruption in this world. So we can't say that the world is not corrupt or any whatsoever or anything. But as I definitely see here that there's many corruption in this country. And it's not really good when people steal resources that are meant for protecting families and the average working folk. It just doesn't make sense when people tend to become more greedy and prioritize their own interests over the broad prospect of a nation. You understand that? So this has become a major critical issue of these particular individuals prioritizing their own interests and wealth over the average folks. Yeah, there's many things. So the winners from GEAR's reforms were largely capital interests and well-connected investors and elites. By design, GEAR favored big business and foreign capital, large corporations and financiers, domestic conglomerates, international firms were best positioned to exploit the liberalized economy. For example, global telecom and defense companies like Telkom Malaysia. As I stated, that's why Telkom has turned basically to crude, low-grade, low-tech company is because of these policies. And I'm not criticizing Telkom for those actions. These actions were conducted by a series of administrations within our government structure, so it's not Telkom. And BAE Systems, they benefited. Swiss Air reported the Roma gained by buying stakes in privatized firms, which were state-owned firms that employed many individuals and many people of the broad South African aspect. And the new black capitalist minority, often business people aligned with ANC, they also profited through the BEE empowerment deals. A notable example was the sale of Sun Air to Retabile Group, a BEE consortium. So also many black capitalists benefited from this, especially ones that were very linked up with the ANC. So a new class of new black elites emerged in the middle and upper class, managers, entrepreneurs, and predator capitalists, in the words of critics, rode the privatization wave and in new investment flows. Some gained corporate positions or shareholdings through empowerment requirements. Overall, critics say monopoly capital retained dominance. By one estimate, the largest 5 South African conglomerates still controlled the vast majority of national wealth by the 2000s. Privatization and corruption was... So this just basically shows that, these guys that always like to blame there's apartheid, like, come on guys, we are not dumb, we're not stupid about that. We are not stupid about that. You can't always blame every issue and situation on apartheid. Okay, there might be some key issues, but Not everything can be blamed. You can't blame your actions for not working, and you looting national resources of the people. It's not your own resources, but you're looting people's resources and then blaming that on apartheid. So you're justifying your selfish actions as that it was implemented by apartheid for you to do those actions. No. No. And this thing just kind of pisses me off because people like to brush it off like, oh, it's apartheidism. Apartheid, they're keeping us down, you know. White monopoly, capital, and all these things. Like, come on, guys. You know, many people within state institutions, I guarantee you by heart, these people, they'll just put, it's either through nepotism, ANC affiliations, favors, or corruption, or just bribing to get into those jobs. Majority of skilled people in those positions of power within this nation have been demoralized, sensitized, and censored, basically putting a barrier between the person who knows the job, who has had the experience for 30 years. For 30 years, a person that has been in a position, they take just a new person on the block and say, hey man, come take this position. Like, what in the right mind is that? What in the hell is that? It's like as if me right now, as you see me, like look at me right now. It's like asking me to go and fix a jet's plane or maybe just do plumbing. I don't even know how to do plumbing. A guy that has been in plumbing for 15 years, who is supposed to be a manager, is not taken in because of the so-called policy, BEE and all these other ones, and GEAR that have messed up and ruined the national economy of this nation. Sorry, they take a person doesn't have any clue of what they're doing, who doesn't have any clue of what they're doing. They take that person to go do their job. Now, like, what the hell is that? And many people like to think, there's apartheid. We deserve it. We deserve this. Come on, man. Like, that's why this nation is so utterly going to collapse. It's cooked. It's boiled up. It's just blown away. It's like putting a toddler in a position of an adult to handle a household. Like, what in the fuck is that? Sorry, what in the hell is that though? What in the hell is that? No, it just doesn't make sense, man. It just doesn't make sense. That's why this economy is collapsing. And many people my age and Gen Zers and many people in this nation, like, at this moment in time now, the youth, like 60% of the whole youth group is unemployed. They don't have any jobs. It's because of these stupid, unpredictable, idiotic policies that were implemented by Trevor Manuel, Gil Marcus, and many more other individuals, ANC cronies, the three biggest political parties, and the GEAR, which is the cancer and tumor within our national progress and our dreams of our kids. I mean, it's just shit. That's all it is, just shit. And I'm really sorry to use vulgar language. So here we have the reported privatization transactions in Africa. So you can see here since 1985, privatization, that was the golden age. of the manufacturing industrial complex. So this was the real economy. You can see by the graph here, it was still beeping, it was going up. 1999, oh, there was a spike. It went down. 1992, 1993, 1994, 1995. That's when it peaked in 1996. The sales of value in millions of dollars spiked in 1996, 1997, and we all know that South Africa was the number one most richest economy in Africa. So many of these sales have come from us because we were a major power, and we still are, but now we're lagging. Just the sick men of Southern Africa, we are the sick men. So as in Europe, they have the sick men of Europe. We kind of like the sick men of Southern Africa, maybe Africa in fact, but there's many other nations that cooked out there. So you can see major sell-off, and it dropped in 1999. That's when many dictatorships started to be forming in all over Africa. So privatization, without not including the broad-based public into these actions that have been done by these individuals who we do not know who appointed them. They were appointed them by private individuals or power individuals to control these institutions, not the broad prospect of the people that so-called democracy stands for us to participate in a broad base of ideas. But it was not done. It was just done by elites. This is where that democracy is not inherently bad, but if it has unchecked power and lobbyist groups and money speaks more than the truth of individuals, in particular people, then that becomes a major critical issue, I have to tell you. So the restructured enterprises in South Africa since 1997, as we saw in the previous graph, was the date of transactions of these companies. SABC registration was sold off to foreign conglomerates and foreign corporations in 1997. Stake sold 100%. Total proceeds was 510 million rands. Proceeds paid 510. Telkom 30%. Proceeds paid was around 5.6 billion rands, and proceeds paid to Exchequer was $1.1 billion. And all major companies here, I wonder if you guys can see that. All the major companies here, we have them here. You can see. We have Sonny Airports Company, SAA, Connex Travel, Sasria, Telecom, MTN, Transrec, Pere, Safco, North Searcher, and MTN Cell. So the gear policy was the one that created this thing of selling off major critical companies to foreign interests and foreign conglomerates and corporations. So basically an economic disaster. So there's many more companies that have been sold, like Telkom. Top 25 privatization transactions in sub-Saharan Africa was Telkom, 30% stake sold. Ashanti Goldfields, 100%. MTN, SAA Airport Company, SABC Radio, MTN South Africa, 9 years. Like, it's just really crazy that after the fall of apartheid and the installation of a democratic government, South Africa, as I quote, has made remarkable progress closing the gap between historically privileged and disadvantaged groups. Major transformations of the judiciary, education, health, housing, and governance sectors have facilitated this progress, yet much remains to be done. South Africa still faces the daunting challenges of reducing unemployment and inequality and enhancing growth performance. Structural rigidness in the economy will constrain growth unless they are addressed pragmatically on the basis of cooperative efforts among business, government, and labor. Ultimately, the triad must equitably share the burden of growth and development. You see, it just never ends. These are the major companies that be sold in South Africa. I will source the links to you so you can check too. The challenge of low economic growth in South Africa from the period of 1994 till 2008. I think that's around about like 14 years, 15 years, 14 years. Yeah, 14 years. Dalma Mahidia and Richard Simpson, School of Economics and for Finance, University of KZN. Abstract as they quote. Keywords. Although the economy has registered economic growth over the past 15 years since the demise of apartheid, the formal sector in South Africa has been unable to provide adequate employment for labor against the background of the recent almost global recessionary climate. This lack of employment is a serious problem. While government has responded with many initiatives to deal with employment creation, unemployment rates in South Africa remain high. In this paper, the problem of low economic growth is initially examined for the period of 1994 to 2008, drawing on the Harrod-Domo model, and then over a longer period by using regressionist analysis. The growth elasticity of employment over 1994 period is low. Over a long time horizon, the marginal growth effect is weak. Ooh, the sun is rising. So this just showcases you that many issues and challenges of increasing joblessness were created by these gear policies and privatization and liberalization of these ideologies. The process of trade liberalization in South Africa gained momentum in 1995, as we see, and ever since then, the productive economy, as stated in my previous video, has been a national disaster that has created the nation to not have many jobs as we have these days. So that is the challenge of low economic employment in the nation, and it was a major critical issue to South Africa. So the unemployment to a series of government interventions have failed to narrow the gap, with unemployment rate last year standing at 36.5% for black people and 7.7% for white people. So when they say 36.5% for black people, just showcases that over a quarter of black individuals are still unemployed, and many companies are retrenching these days due to these disastrous policies implemented by Gear, by Trevor Manuel, and other individuals. So it's become a problem, and it's a major critical issue. So if you wanna argue with me on these basic critical issues, then there's no problem. So privatization negative effects have been, and it undermines democracy and accountability of people, enriches elites, encourages corrupt practices by companies bidding for public spoils, erodes community safety nets and human principle of solidarity by introducing the concepts and practices of excessive individualism, greed, provides high fees, tariffs and poor service, harming the quality of life for many. Privatization policy effects is that it includes private sectors and competitiveness amongst markets to be very glaring and very, very much better and stabilized. So the origin of GEAR was drawn up by a cartel of progressive mainstream economists. The committee was responsible for drafting GEAR comprised the following individuals: Andre Roux, Development Bank SA Coordinator, Reagen Abenjini of University of Cape Town, Brian, University of Cape Town, Andrew Donaldson, Department of Finance, Brian Khan, University of Cape Town, Ben Smith, University of Stellenbosch, Darlene Small, South African Reserve Bank, Ellen Hirsch, Department of Trade and Industry, Guy Maho, Department of Labor, Ernie van der Merwe, South African Reserve Bank, Ian Golden, Development Bank of South African, Development Bank of South Africa, Stephen Gulp, University of Durban, Westville, Dirk van Seventer, Development Bank, Southern Africa, Servus van der Berg, University of Stellenbosch, Luis Pereira da Silva, the World Bank. Where there's a World Bank, there's many issues, and including IMF. We'll get into that in another video. Trevor Manuel as the Finance Minister, then Deputy Gil Marcus, and then the Acting Director of General of Finance, Mario Ramos. In 1997, the composition could betray possibility of racial and ideological bias if race and class interests play a role in developmental policies. So basically, here we just had orthodox economists that wanted to act like they knew what was best for a new democratic South Africa, since I'm sure they were insinuating that common Bantu blacks didn't know how to run a country or how a country should be run. So I think it's due to this effect that many of the individuals in that thing right there were majorly, I must say they were majorly not many black people in that ideology. So it makes sense that many of these conglomerates and systems have benefited non-Bantu blacks individuals, and so there it is, folks. They've taken what they can manage to take from this country, and so it is what it is. But the fight doesn't end here. So as we know that since the period of 1994 and 1996, South Africa has turned from a manufacturing industrial power, we know manufacturing is the real economy, and sloped down now to currently to be a resource colony. I wonder if you folks understand that a resource colony of selling platinum, chromium, gold, coal, vast deposits of that to Diamond Kimberley, the Beers company it's like a diamond company mining, the most biggest in the world. So those are some truly serious individuals right there. Most electric power, coal, synthetic fuel, and nuclear devices. And as I mentioned, it's not only these particular individuals and economists that planned up GEAR that benefited from this act, is that to an extension, many more other nations, including China, India, Germany, and others that I mentioned in my previous video, they have benefited from this economic apartheidism of the majority population of this nation, also to an extent including some individual South African whites and majorly blacks. So The problem is that, so now, the problem, as I will tell you currently, is that once a real economy, once a real productive economy goes poof and goes to waste, it becomes a major problem, because we all know that heavy industries like factories, steel making plants, rail making plants, people that fix railway systems, people that build new roads, build new projects, industrialization at a massive scale, it creates more and more jobs, because there's more and more things to build, and the more and more things and more projects that appear, then the more and more people are required to participate in those particular projects as laborers. So effectively, you can see what I'm prescribing to. But I think I've taken much of your time today, guys. I didn't intend to go a whole lot longer in this video, so soon I'm planning to, I don't know, fix this lighting issue once I have enough setups and resources to commit to a better viewance of this show. So I'd like to thank you for watching the Daniel Mark Show, and we'd like to see you next time. Hit the subscribe button and hit the like button. Also pick up your notification bells, and it's great to see you guys again, and see you next time. Goodbye. Peace.